The CCP has forced this group into internment camps and subjected them to murder, torture, gang rape, forced sterilizations, and slave labor. In June, my team and I on the Select Committee identified multiple links between Goshen's supply chain and this genocide. In one example, Goshen sources aluminum foil from a subsidiary of Xinjiang Non-Ferrous, which is a CCP-owned enterprise known for its prolific use of forced labor. We have asked the Forced Labor Enforcement Task Force to investigate these violations and enforce the law, which would ban Goshen's shipments from entering the country. Finally, you should know that the brave men and women of our military want nothing to do with Goshen, as the Department of Defense is prohibited from buying the company's batteries. So why would we allow this company to receive tax dollars, buy our land, and build a factory here? Why would we allow its batteries into our homes and cars? Our own military is telling us Goshen is a bad business partner, and yet state and some local officials refuse to listen. I'll continue to speak out against this project and fight for my constituents who have voiced time and time again that they do not want the Goliath of the CCP in their backyard. And I'll now turn it over to Congressman LaHood for his remarks. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chairman Mollenauer, and I appreciate the invitation to be here in Green Township. I represent the 16th Congressional District of Illinois, which is central Illinois and the northern part of the state. I appreciate John gave me a visa to come here today to Michigan. Most of you are not my constituents, but but this is obviously a very important topic, and that's the reason why I'm here. And I thoroughly enjoy serving with Chairman Mollenauer on the Select Committee on China. And I just want to take a step back and just remind people why this was created, the Select Committee on China. So earlier in this Congress, under the leadership of Speaker McCarthy, he decided to create a Select Committee on China and put that together, bipartisan. We had 100 Democrats that supported the creation of the Select Committee on China. And we've populated it with members of Congress that care deeply about this issue, Republicans and Democrats. And over the course of the last year and a half, we've been focused on a couple things: exposing the malign activities of the CCP, the Communist Chinese Party, all around the globe and here in the United States. Secondarily, how do we win the strategic competition against China, right? How do we look out 10, 20, 30 years as a country and figure out how we win that strategic competition? And I think you do that on the economic front. And so it becomes more apparent to me that we have to be dubious and skeptical of Chinese-related companies, particularly that are tied to the Communist Chinese Party and state-owned enterprises, which is part of the reason why we're here today. I would also say this, I don't say this to scare people, but we have to wake up to the fact, and we've done this on the committee, China has a plan to replace the United States, and they're working at it every single day. They want to replace us technologically, militarily, from a national security standpoint, and diplomatically. And it's not like a 1 or 2 year plan. This is like a 100-year plan. And they don't, the thing about a communist country, elections don't get in the way, right? Democracy doesn't get in the way. Human rights don't get in the way. It's full speed ahead. And we've seen that on our Select Committee on China, and in a bipartisan way. And I'll give some of my colleagues credit in a bipartisan way. Sometimes when you watch our committee, you don't know who's a Republican or a Democrat because we care about it. It should be an American issue and not a partisan issue. And I would just say China plays by a different set of rules and standards than every other industrialized country in the world does. We've seen that over the last 20 plus years since we've allowed them into the World Trade Organization. We did that roughly 22 years ago. And the premise at the time was allow them into the World Trade Organization and they'll modernize their economy. They'll liberalize. They'll become more democratic. None of that has happened. And so we should be skeptical and dubious. We have an obligation and responsibility to our constituents and this country to make sure that we scrutinize everything. And that's why we're here today. I would just mention, people talk about an economic relationship with China. We clearly have one. But when you look at the relationship with China over the last 20 years, it's really been a roller coaster. It's been up and it's been down. It is down now. And I think it's down because of Xi Jinping has doubled down on authoritarianism in his country. John mentioned a number of these things that have gone on. You look at the provocation in the South China Sea, the building of islands there, the threats to Taiwan, the takeover of Hong Kong. It's really interesting if you look, no one talks about Tibet anymore. You know why? Chinese have won, right? They suppressed all the human rights there. No one ever mentions Tibet anymore. You look at Hong Kong. They've taken over Hong Kong. They control it. It's a surveillance state now in Hong Kong. Taiwan is next. You look at their support for Putin in Ukraine. Regardless of how you feel about Ukraine, nobody wants to see Ukraine lose more than the Chinese and Xi Jinping. That's why they're arm in arm with Putin against us in Ukraine. They blame COVID on the U.S., right? When COVID broke out, people forget they blamed it on the U.S. Army. You look at the balloon that flew over the U.S. And just the blatant work that the CCP did to do that, the theft of our intellectual property. They continue to steal our intellectual property, and of course, the fentanyl crisis. These are just a few things that we need to be aware of and how this relationship has changed. So I wanted to make those opening remarks here. John mentioned a letter that we sent. I ask everybody to read this detailed letter that we put together, dated June 5th, 2024, that went to the Undersecretary of the Department of Homeland Security. A detailed letter signed by Chairman Mollenauer, the Chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, Mark Green, Marco Rubio, the leading Republican on the Intelligence Committee, myself, and Carlos Jimenez, that goes detail by detail on why the Forced Labor Enforcement Task Force should immediately place Goshen on the entity list. And this gets into the facts and figures of exactly why that should be done. The No Goshen Act that John mentioned, we have over 50 co-sponsors on that, and it's bipartisan, which I think people will be surprised to learn. I just want to thank our witnesses here today for being here, and I'm going to talk about them in a second here. I particularly want to thank Amanda Piker of Concerned Citizens of Montino, Illinois, for participating in today's roundtable discussion. Her advocacy has helped to shed light on Goshen and the local concerns of their announced expansion facility in Illinois. We are grateful for your perspective, Amanda, and glad you're here with us today. I would also mention, as a member of the House Intelligence Committee and obviously a concerned American, it's become clear that the CCP is attempting to infiltrate and dominate American supply chains in critical sectors. In September 2023, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker announced that the Chinese-based battery manufacturer decided to move forward with a new operation facility in Manteno, Illinois, a town located in Kankakee, Illinois, nearby my district. In doing so, Governor Pritzker gave Goshen a lucrative taxpayer-subsidized package that would cost Illinoisans more than $500 million. In addition, Goshen is said to be, quote, reviewing and assessing, unquote, how it will use the green energy tax credits President Biden signed into law in 2022 to their benefit, also known as the IRA, which John and I voted against. In our extensive work on the Select Committee on China, we have uncovered disturbing ties between Goshen, the CCP, and forced labor, which raise serious concerns about our national and economic security. In a recent Foreign Agents Registration Act filing, Goshen claimed it was, quote, wholly owned and controlled by, unquote, its parent company, Goshen High Tech, which is based in China. According to their own bylaws, Goshen is required to, quote, to carry out party activities in accordance with the Constitution of the CCP, unquote. In June, our committee uncovered links to forced labor between Goshen and the CCP, including Goshen sources aluminum foil from a subsidy known as Xinjiang Nefarious, a CCP state-owned enterprise known for its prolific use of forced labor, including forced housing of Han men with Uyghur women and families. Goshen sources material from Xinjiang Join World, a company that participated in, quote, poverty alleviation through labor transfer, unquote. These programs are often a disguise for forced labor. A local CCP chapter even awarded Xinjiang Join World employee an award for implementing the CCP's ethnic policies. This activity is unacceptable and raises serious concerns about the intentions of Goshen here in the United States. We know that the CCP and President Xi have an agenda to challenge the United States economic leadership and are determined to maintain their market-dominant position on critical mineral and battery supply chains. Further, the CCP has made it clear that it will utilize any means necessary to achieve those goals, particularly through state-owned and subsidized enterprises that engage in forced labor. While I believe it is important that we incentivize business growth, it is simply unacceptable that governors like J.B. Pritzker and Gretchen Whitmer have decided to leave taxpayers on the hook for billions in federal subsidies, funneling the companies beholden to malign actors like the CCP. Congress must do more to prevent this type of malign influence from infiltrating our country. As I mentioned, that's why I've joined Chairman Mollenauer in introducing H.R. 6175, the NOGOTION Act, a bill that would prohibit companies affiliated with the CCP from receiving any green energy production tax credits through the IRA. As we look to the future, I remain committed to working with my colleagues on this committee and all of you to hold CCP and politicians like J.B. Pritzker, who are willing to throw taxpayers under the bus at the risk of harming our national security, accountable. We cannot allow the CCP to gain a foothold in our backyards at taxpayer expense. Thank you all for being here. I look forward to a fruitful discussion today.
Thank you, Darren LaHood.